You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
Right up Meridian, baby.
All right, folks, welcome back. Right up Meridian. We got a fun game to talk about. Thank God the Pacers came back. Getting a little nervous there. I want to welcome our guest today, the beat writer for the Indy Star, friend of the pod, known Dustin for 10 plus years now. Dustin Dopirak, how you doing, my man?
Doing all right, Scott. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, back. Did you get to go to both games in Minnesota? I'm assuming
Milwaukee, yeah.
Milwaukee, yeah. Jesus,
I know.
Yeah.
One of those two cities up there. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, no. We got back yesterday. Obviously drove this one. It's nice to have a drive trip for playoffs and not have to schedule flights on on a dime. So that's been good. But yeah, no. Just got back yesterday. Just very fascinating trip, obviously, to see just obviously the two dramatically different games. But I think, to your point, obviously, they applied a lot of the lessons learned from game one and just really got that sort of freak out after the way. I mean, yeah. I think that's just the biggest thing you could describe is that first half. It's like, oh, my God, it's the playoffs. Like, we've been talking about this and thinking about this, but this is wild. It's really loud in here, and Dame's going off for 35, and what do we do? And nobody can hit a jump shot to save their lives. What do we do? And they finally, kind of got past that, settled in that second half. Even they were never going to come back, but just being normal, I think in the second half of game one, I thought was really big for them. And the next 2 days they spent just being like, okay, we can do this, we have no reason to be terrified of this stage, that was dumb. Let's just get normal, and we can win. And, you saw just a much, much different team in game two.
Yeah. That game one was so bad. You don't want to write it off because you don't want to just, the Bucks were obviously doing things. They were, pushing a lot of shots to TJ McConnell, and they were doing a lot of things defensively. But on the flip side, you almost want to just say that was a Pacers team that just that first half looked completely overwhelmed by the moment, which isn't awesome, but it is what it is. And if you look at the last, 6 quarters of basketball, the Pacers have won 5 of the 6. Now, it's a little odd because, second half of that first game, you're up 30. Of course, the Bucks are going to play a little differently. But, do you kind of just for the most part, throw out the first half of that first game and just be like, that was such an outlier that really doesn't have a lot of effect? Or you think there's things that could be taken out of that need to continue to be looked at?
There's things that could be taken out of that need to continue to be looked at. But I think it's just their presence, their mindset is not going to come back. I don't think. Yeah. I don't think there's reason. I think that's just a major part of the effect. They won't say it. You probably saw the question I asked Tyrese and his answer about the shooting. And I said, do you think that's nerves? Because it sure seemed like nerves to me. Yeah. It just seemed like everybody who touched the basketball, I imagine just dripping palm sweat, basically, every time someone touched the ball. And it wasn't like they were turning it over, but it was just every time they took a shot, you just got the sense that everybody was just, this.
Well, and they were missing, Miles has missed, but he was missing not even hitting the basket. They were misses that were bananas that you've not seen all season.
Exactly. Miles wasn't close, and guys were getting open, clean looks. Yep. And I think that was, it made for a weird way to judge Tyrese, I think, too, because on a lot of occasions he was seeing multiple bodies and getting the ball to the open man and doing what he was supposed to do, and somebody was missing shots. And I think it's still a fair critique to say, if that's happening, you've got to figure out you're the guy and you've got to go get a bucket and hell or high water. But on a lot of occasions, he got the ball to the guy that was supposed to get the ball, and that guy had a clean look, and they just weren't making them. I think it was 13 in a row to start, and so it's just. I think that's just a big part of it. They just seem nervous. They just seem shook. And it was just wow, it really does get a lot louder in here. And it really, these guys are, they're jumping on every single thing that happens. It's like a college rivalry atmosphere, where a couple bad things happen and all of a sudden this joint is just going nuts. And you're it's not like that in regular season league games. The crowds are good, but they don't jump on your head because they've got 82 too. It's just not the same, level of intensity. And just the intensity was really there. And then it's all right, they don't have Giannis. We might have a shot here. And Dame's No, you don't.
Right.
Hi, I'm Damian Lillard. You guys might have forgotten about me, but like I'm the guy who hits buzzer beating threes to win whole series. Like I'm going to stick 30 footers right in front of you. I don't care. I'm fearless. And it was like, all right, this is a different stage.
Well, and from a macro point of view, this is why I've been saying all season I wanted the Pacers to be in a series and not just the play-in.
Yes.
Because this is, whether or not, and we'll talk about how we think the series is going to go, whether or not we win or lose this series, these are the moments where they can, this team can learn, all right, you got punched in the mouth as about as hard as you can to start a series.
Exactly.
And then you learn you can come back and you can see how quickly this stuff turns. Because after game one, it's like, all right, well, the Pacers suck and there's no way they can beat the Bucks without Giannis. And then after game two, it's like none of these things, after game two, it's like the Pacers, they got it done. It's like the Bucks are done. It's like none of the things are as high as you think. None of the lows are as low. And you can talk about that and know it. But now once you live through it, so now 2-3 years from now, if Halliburton and the team has a bad game in the first round of a final series or something, it's like, all right, man, hey, we've been there. Like, remember Milwaukee in 2024. So that's why I think this is so important, because you've already seen the narrative change just in one more game, and it'll change after game 3 really quickly, depending on how that goes.
No, 100%. And I think, like, I still think that everything that happens now is gravy. As far from an organizational standpoint, they got to where they wanted to go. They're going to experience this, and they're going to have this going forward. I mean, again, even if they get blitzed for the next 3 games and they get beat, run off the table 3 in a row, and it's over, like, they still got something out of this that they couldn't get without being in.
Right.
They just had to be in, and everything, all of their, everything they do as an organization going forward will not be dictated by this, but they're going to have this. They're going to have a sense of, like, this is what it takes. This is what's required. This is what's like. Anytime we get in here again, they'll never have, like, they might have bad periods, but they'll never have a first half like they had.
Yeah.
Like, they had to get it out of their system, understand, the freak out, and be like, okay, we belong here. And the fact they were able to win a game after that tells them, like, all right, it's never too big. Yeah. It's never, like, they might lose games they're not supposed to lose. They might go lose a game 7, like a whole bunch of things can happen going forward for them. But, like, they're not going to have that just like, oh my God, I can't believe it's the playoff moment. That is out of their system. That is past. And they had to get it past.
Yeah.
They had to get through that, get that behind them and move forward.
Well, and they're also going to have, well, I want to continue to talk about the 2 games in Milwaukee first, but they're going to have to get through Friday, which is going to be, all right, we're now home for an amped up crowd. Because you can have the similar, like, kind of the jitters of, like, maybe going too much, and, like, they're going to have to work through that.
Yes.
But before we leave the Milwaukee games, have to talk about a couple other things. And first off, the other takeaway is Pascal Siakam, leading scorer in the playoffs. And also, Pascal can now go to Pritchard and the Pacers group, like, hey, man, 5th year, like, whatever you want the max, like, he earned whatever he's going to get this offseason. He is unbelievable. He's just phenomenal. This also shows, and I've been saying this for the whole series, without Giannis, the Bucks just do not have an answer for Siakam. There is no answer. Nobody who can guard him. I also think this is where, it's a little bit unfair to Halliburton. I think Halliburton is still nursing an injury. We'll talk about him separately, but this is where Halliburton is so good that he sees where the matchup is. He sees that Siakam is the guy, and that's the place to exploit. And Halliburton always looks for the right play and the best position. And so his numbers are down because he's getting Siakam the ball, where, instead of just, I'll take a couple more shots and I'll get to 20 points a game, and at least, people aren't going to talk about, where's Halliburton. But focusing on Siakam, dude, he's unbelievable, and you can tell he knows the moment. This is a guy who's got playoff experience. It shows, but man, everything you wanted from him and more, you see in the last 2 games.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's just been absolutely fantastic. And like, to your point on Halliburton, like, he has taken advantage of the fact that, like, the Bucks are keying on Halliburton first.
Yeah.
And they're saying, okay, like, that's, they like,
well, not to interrupt, but, like, Halliburton's standing out sometimes. So you have, like, Pat Beverly. So it's basically 4-on-4. Like, he's clearing the court to make that happen.
He is. No, absolutely. He's clearing the court. He's drawing 2 bodies. And, like, The other thing, I'm like, they're trying to just break up the pick and roll between him and Turner, and Turner was fantastic on on Tuesday. I mean, he really did so many things well and opened up so many things. And again, Siakam, whereas like the Pacers had to like double team Lillard and decide to do that and say, okay, like this guy can't just beat us anymore. They're not double teaming Siakam as good as he is. I mean, he's getting single coverage because they're so worried about, just not letting, Halliburton kill him off the pick and roll.
Right.
And they're basically, trying to make sure, okay, let's get two bodies up on him. Let's get Miles tagged as far as the roller is concerned. If he's going to roll, make sure Lopez kind of, comes up a little there and make sure he doesn't have any space to work. So you've really involved three bodies, more or less into taking out that pick and roll. And there's Pascal Siakam, and he's going to end up dealing with one guy. In a lot of cases, he's getting it with a head of steam. His defender, a lot of times it is Lopez who's going to come up, and then like all of a sudden, like Lopez can kind of turn and see, Siakam's coming, but Siakam gets a little bit of space to work before he gets, to that, to a pull up, to a mid range, something like that, or whether he's dealing with Portis or whether he's dealing with Lopez, like he's got space and just the length that he's got. It is really hard to take a shot away. It's really, really hard. And he can fade, hit that, put his body at a fading backward angle, and still have a lot of good touch on the basketball. His spin moves are incredible to get to the rim. I mean, just the array he's got and the ability that he can do anything within, 10, 15 feet of the bucket, and he can hit you an open three. And you haven't even, like, there's parts of his, game that you don't even fully see, because I mean, like when he was in Toronto, he did a lot of handling the basketball and operating from the perimeter, but like he's found, his sort of operational spot within, 10 to 15 feet of the bucket. And he's just been cash. I mean, he's just been, just so reliable for them. And obviously again, the experience showed, like he was the one guy on the floor in game one for the Pacers that like heartbeat didn't quicken. He was still the same guy. Like you did not see somebody that was like this moment's big. It's like, I've won a title before. He knows it's his job. I thought it was really fascinating what he said. Kelly Iko from The Athletic asked him a really good question about leadership, and he was just like, I really don't like talking. Like I don't, like, I'm not into it. And it's something because Siakam, like you really listen to him, like he's a sharp guy, like he is very, very eloquent, very, just really thoughtful, like what, really puts a lot of time into what he says to us. He doesn't like doing media at all. But he's, really sharp about it when you get him going. And he's just like, I just want to show up and do my job. Like I just, want to, put the work in, have everybody see me putting the work in and understand it. It's just like, basically I've been challenged because these guys have no idea, what they're in for. And they're asking me these questions. Like these guys really want to know. And so I've been challenged to talk. And it's like, he's seen this moment coming that like, nobody knows what they're going to be doing. And I have to be the guy who does. And so he's really embraced that. It's just been a really impressive, just overall mature, grown up performance from him.
No, I completely agree. He was the only steadying force in game one. He kept it going in game two. And, is he going to keep up scoring 36.5 points a game? I don't know, but everything he's doing feels replicatable against his Buck teams if there's no Giannis. Because it's, with Dame, Dame's scoring 34 points a game, second leading scorer in the playoffs right now. But it's like, is Dame going to continue to have the outbursts from three? Like maybe he has it, but with Siakam, a lot of it is like finishes around the rim and short jumpers and stuff that NBA guys can do all the time. And I just go back to, like you said, unless they're going to double or triple team him, in which case he can pass it out and have a ton of assists. Lopez is too big and too slow to keep up with him, and so he'll just go around him. And then they put Lillard on him. Lillard's too small, and Pat Bev is annoying, but he's too small. And Portis is the only one who can kind of keep up with him. But Portis, Siakam's almost like a spider, and like his arms are just like the way he finishes, and he gets his arms through things, and he's long, and like Portis is not able to keep up with that either. And if I'm the Bucks, I don't know how you. Like it just, I look at this and like, I don't see why Siakam couldn't get 20 to 25 every single night. And, one of the questions we had in our Discord from Luke, which I think is a good question. I heard it on a couple other podcasts the other day as well about kind of the Batman Robin thing. Like, is Siakam really the Batman and Halliburton's the Robin? We don't need to answer that question, but what I do think is interesting is seeing how, it's one play, but there was a play in the second half of the second game where the Bucks were making a run. Halliburton had a little drive in, and he had the lane if he wanted it, or he had a pull-up jumper, but he kind of like circled back to the three and then hit Siakam for a drive. And that's where I look at that, and it's like, I don't know if the Batman Robin thing is even applicable for this Pacers team, because I think both of those guys, and again, we're Pacers fans, we're seeing it through Pacers glasses, but I think both of those guys just want to win. And it's like, I don't care. Right. Like, that was a play where if Halliburton was like, I'm the alpha, no knock on like a LeBron, but that's a play like that play I'm talking about. LeBron takes that shot like all day long. Like, I'm the leader. That's my shot. I don't care if it's a good or bad shot. I think sometimes Halliburton needs a little bit more of that, but I don't know. I look at that the Batman Robin question, and I just think they want to do whatever it takes to win, and they're fine. Yes. It's like, I think Halliburton's like, you're fine being the Batman this series, and we'll figure out who is it for the Knicks series. So sorry, a lot of rambling stuff. They're not a question there, just kind of talking over things. But
no, I mean, I think, obviously we get into these narratives and we and they're sort of fun ways to talk about sports. Like obviously the Batman Robin sort of concept has been a piece that we've talked about for years and years and years in terms of who's what, how they fit together, what like when you have two stars together, what's their dynamic like. But I mean, if you really think about it, like obviously when one of those guys that's in that discussion is leading the NBA, leads the NBA in assists, then you are by definition talking about a different kind of superstar, because it's not about being the guy who has to take the shot. Like part of his game, part of his genius is being able to involve other people. And like, so you can't, it's not holding to the same standard, but you got to realize that the creation is a big piece to it, the ability to create for others. And so, like that he's never going to be a guy that's going to go get 25 shots, whereas a lot of these other even point guards like, Jalen Brunson is going to be the type to go, feel like I've got to go get 24. And so like, there is a some of that comes from, I think, an admitted weakness on Halliburton's part that I think is going to show up in these playoffs is that, I mean, he has to get some physical development. He is pretty admittedly being a guy who throughout most of his sort of youth as a player did not really want to be in the weight room, enjoyed handling a basketball, getting his hands on a ball, passing drills, like playing the game, involving others. And when it came to like, hey, this is the part where, like you got to do push-ups after shots, he's like, I kind of cheated on those. Yeah. Like Ty, be real about that. And you see him and like, again, like see him walking around with the shirt off. You're like, you're not the biggest, bulkiest dude, and so you see, I think in playoffs, the value of that. Jalen Brunson bounces off people, and like it's like boom, boom, and like kind of finishes through contact. Like, and that guy's, like he's a bowling ball, and Tyrese Halliburton does not have that build, and so he's, he gets stronger. I mean, like I think he had the thing he said about on Paul George's podcast about, like when he came from Sacramento, he's like, well, when's the last time you lifted? Like, I don't know, it's been 2 weeks. He's like, we get in the gym every day, and so he is stronger than he was when he arrived. But, he needs an off season where it's, where he's really focused on that and transforms.
Well, and I look at, look across the way, you look at Giannis, go back and look at Giannis's first couple of years. He had a frame very similar to Halliburton, like long, lanky. He's like, this guy can't put up
6'11".
Yeah, yes, totally different height, but like just that kind of long, lanky, lean frame. And now look at him. And it's like you put that, you get that kind of muscle definition onto Ty, and it's going to be wild. The other question we have is, I'll ask you this. This is from Jack Ryan. Love the names in our Discord. Will we see Halliburton take over one of the games this series, or is it not in the cards with those injuries? And so I will also expand on this. Do you think this is something I think all Pacers fans are thinking, putting a percentage on it? Like, it just doesn't feel like Ty is 100% right now, right? Like he's probably in the 70-80% range. Like there's still some lingering hammy going on.
I guess. I mean, I can't tell you the last time I saw something happen and I said, that's the hamstring.
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay. I can't tell you the last time I saw that. And it's just, I get it can be there, like it's got to be there someplace, but I don't look at it and think, I mean, like maybe he doesn't have the end-to-end speed, maybe, it's like, but I've never looked at it and said he just don't look. I mean, I feel like a lot of people have said he don't look right, and I haven't had the same impression. I think what's driven the two things that have driven it more, I mean, they're hand in hand things, are just that, like the attention, the constant double teams, and then being saying like, okay, like he's got to play off the ball more, and he's got to be the movement shooter because Buddy Hield's not there anymore.
Right.
I really think a major difference in what he was then and what he is now, and has been, is that Buddy Hield really had a lot of gravity. I mean, like that's like Caitlin Cooper pointed that out a ton, just how much Buddy Hield, like took bodies away. And I really think that's still big. I mean, again, they've got shooters that are fine. Ben, Aaron Neesmith's a fine shooter. Right. Ben Shepherd's a fine shooter. Jalen Smith's a fine shooter. Miles Turner obviously is really good, a terrific pick and pop shooter. But I mean, like Buddy took his guy out of, like just out of the equation when you're, like when you're running pick and roll down the middle, you didn't have to worry about whether Buddy's guy was going to cheat in, because he can't, no chance. Even Buddy didn't have a great year. He just has that kind of gravity.
Yeah.
And, like also just the movement that he does. I mean, I still think their dynamic is fascinating. Like Tyrese he's like, I call him every day. We talk every day. And like Halliburton's, like again, his genius, like he's not afraid to ask anybody a question. The fact that he like really stopped Fred VanVleet, when they beat the Rockets, like he searched out Fred, who was not in that game, and he was, just like, hey, Fred, tell me more about getting the ball to Pascal. What do I need to do? And so, but like he's, again, like he used Buddy's house, but he's asking Buddy, like, how do you blur? Like, when do you know when to set versus to slip? Like when you're running around off the ball, like I haven't been doing this and you're the best at it, and even like we talked to him about it, he's like, Buddy can't set a screen to save his life. He's a terrible screen setter, but like, cause I their dynamic's great,
Well, and you look back at it,
said, like,
I was gonna say, you look back at this year, maybe that was probably like that may not have been the best trade. Like you look back and we just haven't gotten much. You haven't gotten much for it. It does make me wonder, it sounds like the Pacers did that to do Buddy a solid. It hasn't really helped him. Do you think, and then we have to get back to game 3 and 4, but do you think in the offseason, either they can make a play at a Buddy Hield, or do you think they can get somebody, do you think they can get that back with another player or another scheme, or like, or do you think it's like Halliburton is always going to have trouble without playing with Buddy, without having a Buddy Hield?
I mean, I think they need to go get a guy.
Yeah,
that's my initial thought, and I did float it to me and Tony East were just talking with me. Obviously, like Tony's the guy on the beat that's there all the time, and he obviously was in the series. And I was like, I mean, like considering it's not going as well in Philly recently,
it's probably a discount to where it was. It's probably a discount to what they offered him at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, like, do you think they could call him up and say, hey, buddy, that 20 still on, maybe like, it's like, we can't do 20 anymore because we got to go get Pascal, but how about 18?
Yeah.
How about 16 a year? What do you think?
I mean,
come back, play with Ty, like,
I don't think it'll cost more, but like Clay's out there, might be out there this summer. That's a wild, that would be,
can't see it
too much for too long, but
yeah. And it's just, you're starting to see the breakdown in him and whatnot. And so I'd be really surprised if he went there, but I mean, I would ask, I think we were, talking about whether or not just the answer that he gave to Jake Fisher about feeling like, he didn't understand his role, like that he didn't feel wanted and all that, like that might make it harder to make it work. But I think that's the missing piece, like, I mean, it's just, and not just for Ty, I mean, I think they could just use a guy that's a high volume, 3-point shooter like Buddy was. And so, like maybe it's not just, maybe, you can't pull it off with Buddy. I mean, the other name I saw, and I have no idea, like I just started looking at names to be like, okay, like who's free agent shooting guards? And I was doing this probably, a month ago, and I, probably there might be intel out there on this, and I haven't read it. So somebody might be like, oh, you missed the story from this guy, like he's never going anywhere, or he's definitely going to this. So I could be totally wrong. So like if you hear me, say something that like is off, my bad. But like Gary Trent Jr. was a name that I saw. Like I have no idea. He might be perfectly happy in Portland and never want to leave. But like, or was he in Toronto? Toronto. He's in Toronto. Okay, he might be perfectly happy in Toronto and never want to leave. But point being, my fault. That makes it sound even stupider. But like he's a guy that is a really good movement shooter, and he's got defensive capacity too.
Well, and you're seeing it this season, and this is something that I think I completely agree. The Pacers need another lockdown 3-point shooter, but it's they don't grow on trees, but they're starting to kind of, because you look at like Dante DiVincenzo, he was available for a lot of teams, and now he's killer. Grayson Allen wasn't exactly the hottest commodity. He's a killer 3-point shooter. This and this is where I think the Pacers have a real advantage is. Again, Aaron Nesmith is not, wasn't really hot on the market. We got him.
Sure.
And what Ty is able to create is so many open looks for so many guys that it'll probably help guys get shots. I want to we've a little bit off track. We'll get to game 3. No. The last kind of random topic I do want to hit at is my buddy Robert came over to watch the game at my house. He's a neighbor, great friend of mine, also a big Bucks fan. But he calls me like 2 minutes in. He's like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? Didn't realize the game was blacked out on NBA TV. And he comes over to watch Bally Sports. And it was really because I have season tickets. So I have, humble brag. And I have, the Pacers, they give Bally Sports subscriptions to season ticket holders, which is great because I'm really not sure I'd pay the $79 a month for that. Mm-hmm. But it was really interesting watching a game with somebody who is not a Bally Sports subscriber, just them being like, it's great production value. They do a great job. And then with the broadcast, it's like they have a massive problem getting distribution. But then also like during timeouts, half the time it's just a screen of like, we're waiting for the commercial break. It's like the Zen moment on YouTube TV. But it's like, he's like, why aren't they selling ads here? I'm like, I keep telling him, like, I don't know, man, like they're bankrupt. Like this is probably why they're bankrupt. Like they're not a great business model. I'm just curious, you're on the beat. You'll probably do a lot of this in the off season. Is there a chance, I was really keyed in on the Amazon buying the debt from Diamond Sports. Are we going to have a world where Bally's is not involved next year? Like, there's a new TV rights deal. Like it's a real bummer that you had a phenomenal playoff game that a lot of the city of Indianapolis couldn't see because it was on Bally Sports. Again, I'm not knocking Quinn and the team that does the TV broadcast, just their distribution. It's a horrible model. And so I hope next year that gets changed.
It's been, obviously it's been a wreck for a long time. And again, it's bankruptcy, like everything has gone wrong as far as that's concerned. It's weird for me because like I get it as part of like my DirecTV stream package. So like, I don't, like I obviously watch the games that we don't travel to.
Right.
We don't go if it's a one-off fly trip. During the regular season, we don't go to those. So I watch those on TV and right off of that. And I haven't seen production issues because it's not like streamed on its own. And so I haven't noticed that as far as just the taking it in thing. But obviously just all of the extent to which they have been just in limbo. It was just a poorly executed thing from the start. Obviously, it was a forced sell from the beginning because it was just a giant, conglomerate situation where it was like, did Disney buy Time Warner? I think that's what it was. Like I'm blanking on who
they bought that, but they didn't buy the Fox Sports.
You couldn't. It was like there was because you combine it with ESPN and it got to be into monopoly.
Correct. So they got spun off, and then it's just not a business that makes sense.
Right.
When it's not part of a cable
Federal
budget.
Trade Commission standpoint, I think that's what it was. It basically said like, you can't keep this.
Yeah.
This gets into a level of integration that's too much that gets to your monopolist, like gets it to being a monopoly, and like you get in those things like you can't have all of that. One company can't have all of that. That gets too much. Then we're like Standard Oil, but for television. Like it's getting to be too much. And so they had to sell those off, and basically like Sinclair, puts together a company and buys it, and then apparently was siphoning, like Diamond, I think, is suing them for siphoning money off, basically just not putting anything in the product. So it's been really rough from the beginning. And if you know a lot about Sinclair and what its goals are, obviously, like sports broadcasting isn't super high on that list. And so it's been a wreck from day one, and just I've heard nothing but bad things as far as the app and whether it's in or out or whatever. And like I said, like my watching experience hasn't been bad, but at some point soon, I would think before the season, you're going to start to see some of this stuff flip over, because it's been bought by Amazon, and you're going to start to see like real changes in that. I don't know what it's going to look like and what the timeline is and all these kinds of things. The Pacers are very odd about talking about this.
Yeah.
As far as just we don't get a lot of, I guess it's just playing cards close to the vest, when it comes to this, because it's not, like we go through sort of corporate communications versus what we, who we deal with as far as players and coaches and stuff like that, as separate entities, basically from a, PR standpoint. And they're very just, like I guess I get it. It's contracts, but like they're not going to come out and say, we really wish this was better.
It feels like they would agree with that. They just can't do it. But anyway, we'll save the rest of that for an off-season pod. But it's interesting. It was fun watching with a non-Bally Sports guy. And he's like, what's the cost of this? I'm like, it's like $79 a month. It's absurd. Anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Everyone can watch the games from here on out. Next game is a odd start time, 5:30 on Friday. Still don't understand that start time, but it is what it is. So from my perspective, I'm taking my son. He's been to a lot of games this year, and we were at the in-season tournament game against the Celtics. But I was like telling James, my son, like, it's going to be loud, man. Like, be ready. It's going to be loud. And I'm like, it's going to be like that in-season tournament game, but a lot of the time. I'm curious your thoughts. I'm expecting a pretty wild atmosphere. I think the 5:30 start time might actually help. Like, people might just leave from work, get a quick drink, get there. I think it's going to be pretty fired up. And I guess I'm just curious to see. I think we're going to see more of the second game play out. Even in the first game, when I watched parts, when the Bucks, when the Pacers were moving the ball and running the ball fast, the Bucks looked old. They looked slow. I love the Pacers starting to do, full court press. They're doing a lot of things that I'm not sure the Bucks can keep up with. I want to get your thoughts on Giannis, but just overall, what do you expect the atmosphere to be like on Friday? And kind of what do you expect the Pacers to do in that game to start things off?
Yeah, I mean, I do think the atmosphere is going to be pretty jacked up. I mean, obviously, I think the reasoning for it is obviously ESPN's got 3 games that night.
Yep.
It's basically an experiment, more or less. And like, because it's the one Eastern Conference game. So, like if you're gonna try to stack 3 games and you're gonna decide to use that 5:30 time slot, well, you got to use the one that's in the Eastern time zone.
Right.
Like that's the direction you've got to go. And I think it was funny because we've done some crossover stuff. Milwaukee Journal Sentinel is a Gannett property also. So we've been doing a lot of sort of video or podcast work with Jim Lazarski this week. It's been a blast. And his joke was, he says, well, they gave it to them because they're Indiana. They'll give everybody off school that whole day. It's basketball.
I mean, we had the Eclipse Day off. It's just
But like basketball reasons are always a reason not to come to work or school in Indiana. Like
fair point.
Guys, like that's all you have to say. It's like there's a game. And, if it's at 5:30, it's like, okay, it's like if you were having a big high school game at 2:00 for whatever reason, they'd be like, well, all right, well, last one out of town, shut the lights off. Like, it's just you guys that's how you roll in Indiana, right? Which I got a kick out of. But I mean, I think I do expect the city to embrace it and say, okay, we are going to find a way to going to take a half day of work, or some places that like can do it, be like, yeah, go to the game, go watch the game, get out of here, like get out of here early, knock off at 4:30, something like that, like that kind of stuff. And obviously our school certainly will be out for a long shot by that point. And so, like, if you're a student, if you're a college student, if you're a high school student or whatever, and you find a way to get tickets, you can get there. And I expect you're going to get on Georgia Street at like 3, and people are going to be rolling by that point. And so, like, I think that's what they're going to do. I mean, I think they're going to view it like, hey, like this is like NCAA tournament when they've, when you've got, tournament games at Gainbridge, a first and second round game at Gainbridge, like, people still show up for those. So, it's going to be different because it's like, okay, like it's one team that everybody's got to get up for, as opposed to that kind of rolling noon to 7, 9 situation that you have in the NCAA tournament. But they're going to show up. They're going to be loud. And again, because they won a game, like, obviously that just changes momentum so much.
Well, and that I think changes everything going into this weekend, because I think there's a real narrative, I don't think, and you can correct me, it doesn't seem like Giannis is going to play on Friday. We don't know, but it doesn't feel like Giannis is going to play on Friday. If he does, he's not going to be 100%. But if he doesn't play, by winning that game Tuesday night, you come into this, and to me, everything sets up nicely for the Pacers that, if they can have a good showing Friday night, or if they can win, from a high level, this is the nightmare scenario for the Bucks, because the Pacers, even in game 1 where they were getting blown out, they looked faster, they looked younger, and when they really push the pace, the Bucks are the ones that get tired. The Bucks are old, and having the 42-hour turnaround from Friday to Sunday, that's only going to benefit the Pacers. You're going to have the energy of the home crowd. This does feel like a weekend where the Pacers could blitz the Bucks, and suddenly now it's a 3-1 series. And if Giannis hasn't played and you're the Bucks, you look at this and it's like, all right, man, do we want to rush Giannis back for a being down 3-1 in a series, when you're also looking at, like, can we even beat the Celtics in 2 rounds? Like, what are we going to risk a long-term Giannis injury for pretty much drawing dead in the playoffs?
Right. I mean, I don't think I like the way, Doc Rivers was asked about that after game 1 in a much different tone, in the sense of, we already beat him game 1. Like, you looked really good. Does that change your, outlook by saying, like, okay, maybe we can win without him?
Right.
And his thing was like, no, we want Giannis back. When we can have Giannis back, we want Giannis back. And so I think they're going to be, I mean, like, they also trust, I think they also do trust that Giannis is not like, Giannis is pretty much a mutant. I mean, like, I don't know, like, what, like, in the X-Men sense.
Yeah, he's bionic. He'll come back and he'll be fine.
Yeah. And I think there's almost like a view there of, like, this guy doesn't heal like normal people.
Right.
Like, this isn't like a guy who you had to say, well, and most other people would need 3 or 4 weeks after this. And, like, I mean, normal people would need like 6 months, like, and but, like, even normal other NBA athletes need 2-3 weeks. I mean, Doug McDermott had something similar to this, like, right out of, the gate when he got, traded to the Pacers, and he, missed 10 games.
Right.
And so, like, obviously it's different schedule. It's, like, this is much more spread out.
And we're at 3 weeks now with Giannis's injury, right? Like, we're right at the 3-week mark.
Yeah, we're right at the 3-week mark. And so April 9th, so we're 16 days.
Okay.
I think it was April 9th. So that's 16 days. And so you got like 2 more. So you're about 18. So, like, it'll be like 3 weeks. I think they'll be like 3 weeks. Like, so the 9th, 9 plus 21 is 29. So whatever 4 days from now is 3 weeks. So yeah, I think, but there is sort of a view of, like, if anyone can heal faster, it's Giannis.
Do you think we see him this weekend?
I mean, you got to prepare for it. Yeah. If you're the Pacers, like, I don't, like, I'm only getting, so, like, this is, like, I'm sort of like 2 stages removed, right? So, like, obviously, because, we've been able to actually talk to Doc the last couple games, since they've had pregame, and like, it's staggered nicely that they practiced on Monday, before the Pacers did. So basically, and their kind of practice facility is catty corner from Fiserv. So, we went over to Fiserv, listen to Doc, and then went over to Pacers after that. And so got to hear at least a couple times Doc talking about how far along Giannis is. So, like, but then the thing is like, all right, like, like, I've seen a Doc press conference before, but, like, I haven't been integrated in terms of, like, well, this is where it was here, and this is where it is now, and this is where it is now. And so I've also been talking, like, just hearing from Jim and sort of his thoughts in terms of how he's reading tea leaves from what he's, hearing from Doc. And Jim was not expecting him on Friday,
Okay.
but I would caution, don't get too excited for the Pacers fans. I mean, like he was saying that he'd been on the court several days. Doc had said like he's getting better. Like there's very clear progress. Doc will tell you. Doc made a joke because somebody asked about it, about what he was doing specifically, and he's like, I've made this joke before. Can somebody help him out here? He's like, it's with my name. He goes, and he was like, I'm not really a doctor.
Right.
Doc doesn't have anything to do. I do not have a doctor's degree. So he's like, I stay out of there. His other joke was, he's like, I don't want to talk to the trainers. They'll make me lay down on the table. He's like, you've seen how I walk. They'll be like, hey man, like we got to talk about this. Like, I don't want to deal with any doctors. You know, like somebody tells me, somebody gives a report. I try to stay away as far from that as I can. And I think a lot of coaches do that, for the most part. They're like, I don't want to be in a position where I'm, like, if you tell me too much, I don't want to try to grab the reins on that. You either tell me he can play or he can't play. Like don't make me the decision maker.
Right.
You guys are the ones with the doctorates, or you guys are the ones with the advanced degrees in medicine, like, or athletic training or whatever. Like, don't come to me and say, you coach, make the choice, because I'm gonna want to play him.
Right.
Whatever it is. So like, just don't come to me. I'll trust your judgment. Just keep it out of my hands. So like I would say, like, if I was a betting man, and I'm not, because I usually lose, and then I would say, like, bet against him on game 3. But I wouldn't, if I were Rick Carlisle, I would spend, a lot of time. I would probably spend 75% of my time this week expecting him to play.
Yeah.
And so, because you've already played 2 games without him, like, lean towards, this is coming back soon, like, maybe not game 3, maybe it's game 4. I mean, you got to presume he's back by game 5.
Right.
I think you operate under that assumption that it's a sure thing game 5, that you're up in the air for 3 and 4. I think you had to going in presuming 1 and 2, he was probably out. So like, like, he was doubtful for 1 and 2 before they made the call. Like, I would expect, like, I'd be prepared, if I'm Rick Carlisle, for it to show up as questionable.
Yeah.
On when the injury report comes out sometime this evening. So, that's how I would process it if I was him. Like, just be prepared, because again, that guy's too good.
No, he's fantastic, and he could solve the Siakam thing. The other thing that I would like the Pacers to do a little bit less of is Andrew Nembhard has been awesome. He's played great in game 2. He was fantastic. The thing that he's getting a little bit wrapped up in is he gets a little bit chesty. He's starting to get a little bit, a couple altercations with Dame and then Bobby Portis. But what I've noticed is, and I'm curious if you see this in person, it does seem to be that, a team that has Bobby Portis and Patrick Beverley, it's not shocking. They are a pain to play. They're a pest. They're, Bobby Portis is always, shouldering into you and just always doing stuff to annoy you.
Yeah.
It does definitely seem that, the Pacers need to keep their heads cool, because when they start getting into that mode of getting chippy and starting to smack around and do that, the Bucks play better, because the game slows down. And it feels like, if I'm the Pacers and I'm Rick Carlisle, I'm just telling the guys, like, hey, you can do it with your actions and just go. Like, just run. And, like, yes, Portis is going to smack you, and, Beverly's going to do stuff to annoy you. Like, do not fight back, because that's what they want. And just go and just run their asses into the ground.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree. It's just sort of maintain your game. I think Nembhard, especially because it's his first playoffs,
right,
and he's got the Dame assignment, is just trying to be like, I am not afraid of you.
right.
Like, and trying to get that across. I am not afraid of you. I will fight you. Like, Nembhard is a tough little dude, man.
No, I know.
He's very, like, and you're around Nembhard, like, he's got this very edgy thing to him, where like you kind of don't know where he's coming from. And even, like, you probably see, like, press conferences with him, like, media with him. Like, we get along with him reasonably well, like, when the cameras aren't on. But, like, he's, like, sort of challenging us, and, like, kind of, he's going to force you to ask whatever question you want to ask. And, like, but he's just very, very edgy dude. And, like, you've seen that edge come out in these playoffs, especially. But I think he's been trying to get it across, that, like, I'm not somebody to be trifled with. And, like, I think he has to, like, there's a little bit of fake it until you make it there.
Yep.
But, I think there has to be, because it's just like, he has to get the Dame assignment. There's not, like, as long as you're guarding him one-on-one, there's not a better option, because you can't take Nembhard or Neesmith off of Middleton. You don't have a better option there. And, like, maybe you flip him around with, like you go some back and forth. I mean, you got to guard Giannis with Pascal. I mean, like, I think as much as Neesmith has fought wars with him, he ends up losing.
Yeah,
because there's just.
But you're right. You need Neesmith on. I mean, Neesmith has played well on Dame when Dame gets scorching hot. But you need Neesmith on Middleton. Like, Neesmith has been just fantastic on defense, and you need him around there. But it's this is where the Pacers, you see the flaws in that. Once Nembhard's off the court, and then you have Halliburton, as we both know, is not great defensively. When you bring in TJ, it's like there's not a lot of guys there who can guard the guards the Bucks have.
No, I mean, TJ is working hard on that assignment and losing. He's working hard.
That's not what he's there to do. Like, I mean, like, that's just not. He's not gonna be a lockdown defender against Dame Lillard. Just not gonna happen.
No, he just isn't. He's just giving up too much size. It's a tough assignment. It's the point of the matter. Like, Drew's got to be that guy, and it's just like he has had to be like, I'm going to keep showing up. Like, you might stick another 3 in here, and I'm going to act like it doesn't bother me at all.
Right.
I'm going to keep working. And, like, I mean, he really, game 1, he was probably a little too aggressive, and, like, Dame played into that. It was just like he was able to get him kind of up over the top and blow by him in certain cases, and then certainly get 3-shot fouls, when he was all the way up in him. And, like, Dame really showed his experience. But I thought Nembhard did a much better job in game 2 when it comes to that, of playing with more discipline. Still getting up in him, but, like, I mean, he is fighting through every screen, and they are running him through a gauntlet of them. Like, I mean, just like everything around the perimeter trying to spring Dame. It's one body after another body after another body after another body. It's Lopez, it's Portis. Like, he's just getting banged again and again and again and again, and he is fighting through everyone getting in there. And they are, like, Siakam. I think guys like that have done a good job of sort of showing and getting in his way so they can flip back, and get Nembhard back on the assignment. Like, so he's got a lot of good help, I think. But he has really just fought. It's been such a physical pounding that he's had to take, and he's fought through it. It's been really, really impressive.
Yeah, no, I hear all that. He's the one who seems like needs to just make, don't get just pulled into that, because that's what the Bucks want to do. So we'll kind of start wrapping up with this. What do you see as happening in games 3 and 4? As I look at it, it's, I think if the Pacers can keep up that intensity, can keep up that pressure, and keep up the defense that they had, I think they can win both games at home. To me, the play of the game in game 2, there's a lot of them, but it was holding the Bucks to an 8-second count or a 7.5, and then the Bucks calling timeout, and then the 5-second call right after that. Them going to full court, I think, really threw a wrench in a lot of what the Bucks was trying to do. And to me, it's just, can the Pacers keep up that intensity? I mean, it's tough. It's a lot of work, but can you face guard these guys that much? But I mean, I for a team that has won a title and has all of the pedigree with the Bucks, there is a world that you saw it in that play with the 8-second and the 5-second call. They can kind of break down, get a little frustrated, and give up is not the right term, but just kind of self-combust without having Giannis. And it's like, that's the negative part of having a bionic superhero on your team, is when he's not there, a lot of things change. And so it does feel like if you can keep that pressure up, there can be cracks in what the Bucks are trying to do. And I think with the home crowd, the Pacers could be buoyed by that. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that they can win these next 2 doing that. The only thing that holds me back is this is a team that you and I have talked about all season. They've come home in these points where it's like, you have everything available to you. All you got to do is beat the Raptors, and they can't do it. Or you got to beat the Pistons at home, and they can't do it. And like they've not been a great home team. Like, they've not come in and closed out home court. It's been a young, inconsistent team. So I could definitely see them just laying an egg on Friday as well.
Yeah, I'd be really surprised if they lay an egg on Friday. It's more of a case of once you've got back there, and like, I think they're going to have a lot of juice on Friday. I'd be really, I don't want to say I'd be really surprised. I'd be surprised if they don't convert that to a win. I think that's going to be so much. They're going to be so buoyed. There's going to be a high of that. It's going to be game 4 when they're used to being at home.
Right.
That's going to be tough to sustain because it's just like there is just going to be so much juice in that building on Friday. And then when you sort of get past that, and then there's another game to play, I think there's a reason why, like, you always, like, underdogs, like, it's really tough to beat them in game 3, but you can get them in game 4.
Right.
And I think that is going to be a thing of, like, once you get past just like, Miles Turner he is through the roof excited about this. Like you probably saw his post game deal.
Yep.
Like, Tyrese is going to be like that. Like, all of them are going to be just so juiced for this, and it's like, wow, this is going to be something we've never experienced. It's going to be a different app. It's going to carry them. And there's going to be a wave, and obviously some things can go wrong there if they get overly wired again and they're not making shots, and, like, right, they're expecting it to feel like a knife through butter and it isn't. They could get knocked back on their heels, but I just kind of, at the end of the day, feel like there's going to be too much forward momentum for them to not put out a really good performance and probably win the game. But I think it's once they're past that, so, like, you kind of get past that high, and then there's another game to come play, at your building, and then Milwaukee settled into it, like in the same way that the Pacers were settled in after game 1, and, like, like in these kind of the early kind of half where you get to stay in one place, is the other thing too, because it's like, all right, we're gonna come back, practice tomorrow, look at this. Shoot around in the morning on Sunday. We'll get ourselves right. We'll get ourselves back to normal. And you have time to do that. And that, game 4 is tough. Game 4s end up being really deciding, sort of games. And you have to presume, all right, Milwaukee's going to have a counterpunch,
right?
Like, of some kind. And you don't know what exactly it's going to be, but, like, there's going to be all right, we're having problems here. What do we have to do to counter that? And, you've got a veteran coach, won a bunch of games, has a title, what's he going to do? You have veteran players, you have guys who can do a lot of things well. There certainly is the possibility of fragility, because, I mean, you really look at this Bucks season and it's not been what they hoped.
Yeah.
So if it starts getting out of hand, that can change. But I think they're motivated. I mean, like, and this series is chippy. This cracks me up. Just like they all got friends over there.
Yep.
Like Neesmith and Middleton go back, like, 15 years. Like, they both went to the same high school. Like, Middleton was kind of a mentor for Neesmith a little bit, like, in the sense that, like, he had other mentors that were like, we know Chris, like, and Chris comes back every summer to Charleston, like, we're going to have you guys play. And, so they go back to that, like, Halliburton's been with Giannis for some things and Dame for some things. And they, he was on the same, like, they were at FIBA together with Portis, and, like, but they get out collectively and they are chippy. And Bobby Portis is saying that these guys are front runners and everything like that. And you had the game ball thing, and, like, it's getting amped. And you obviously have the additional controversy of what Tyree said about as it happened with his brother.
Well, then you have, like, did Dame, Dame kind of not stole, but, Dame gets the All-Star MVP in Ty's house, and Ty kind of gets iced out of shooting shots, and there's a lot there. But you know what? I've said this for a while. It's good. Like, it's good to have rivals. It's good to have chippiness, and that's
storylines.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at, like, the Knicks and the Pacers series in the 90s. It was fun because it was chippy, and there was a lot of stuff going on. You played them over and over again, and it's great to have. To have this, especially if with a team in your division where you're going to play them 4 times a year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's going to be around. Like, there's going to be a continual, continual narrative there. So it's just, I think, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. And so, like I said, I think there's going to be 2. They're going to have a lot on their side in game 3, but, like, game 4 is going to be something else. I mean, like, I think ultimately, I think that's it. I would say most likely, I think they win game 3 and game 4 decides the series.
Yeah.
So if they lose it, then, Milwaukee's going to have momentum going back to game 5. If they get Giannis back for game 5, they're up 3-2 and they've just got to win 1 and 2 the rest of the way. But if the Pacers pull it off and they go up 3-1 to Milwaukee, they could drop game 5, come back game home, game 6, and close it.
Yeah.
So, I think really there's a good chance that Sunday decides who wins the series.
I would agree with that. The only thing I would say is that if we lose both home games, it's like, we're down 3-1, but we got Doc Rivers right where we want him. Like that's exactly where you want to have Rivers in a playoff series.
It's rough.
Sorry, Doc. Hey, man, history speaks for itself. But no, I tend to agree with you. I think Friday night feels like it feels like that's a game the Pacers can win, because that's going to be, because it's also, whatever game Giannis comes back in, he's going to be a little bit just kind of getting his sea legs back in. Will have been a week off. You saw it with, it's not exactly the same, different injuries, but, Embiid played really well, but can only play a half when he came back from his injury. So I'd expect something. But again, Giannis is in a different bionic category. So he'll probably come back and score 74 and play all the minutes and have like 20 blocks.
And it's a calf versus a knee,
Correct,
and that's also significant.
But no, I agree with you on the game 4, because if the Pacers can go up 3-1 with a chance to close it out at home, that's a great spot. But I think, this is all gravy, but if you win one of these two at home this weekend, it's really gravy. Because then it's like the worst case, you're losing a series in 6 to the Bucks. And yeah, they don't have Giannis, but they have a lot of good players. They have a great all-star in Dame. They have a lot of, championship pedigree. In the end, they are the 3 seed. You're the 6 seed, even if it's only a couple games difference. And the trajectory of this season was never a title or an Eastern Conference Finals. You did what you needed to do. You were in a series. You played well. You won a game by a lot. Hopefully you win one more. So I'm with you. I think all of this is, and you've also, I think the other question that you've answered is, I think a question a lot of us kind of were asking in, March and April is, Siakam is nice. Are we really, we're going to give him the contracts. That's what you have to do in the NBA. But is that going to be a good contract, giving him a max? And it's like, the answer is yes. Like, yes. These 2 games alone have been like, I'm very comfortable with him getting the max this offseason as well. So to me, everything is gravy from this point on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, to your point, I think it's just, and the way he plays, like, I think he can be, he doesn't have to be, you don't have to have 5 years of him in tip-top shape, for him to be effective. Like, because he can play, he's got the kind of crafty game that, like, it will show up, not past it. Like, its expiration date is further in the future.
Yeah. Well, I'll also say, I'll give you credit for this. I've been talking to a lot of friends and kind of quoting you for saying this, or this general theme. But, what we're going to see next year is way different than what we even saw this year, because this team has just not had any time to stop and put things together. And the time that the only time they've had has been between the end of the season and game 1 of the series. And you saw how effective Siakam was with that week off. Now, a lot of it is matchups. A lot of it is, he was playing well, but, I think that's a point that is getting lost, especially in the national narrative, is that, we were rolling, Halliburton got hurt, and then you just had a bunch of random changes where you take Buddy Hield, who's a bigger, as you've mentioned, a bigger part to this team than I think nationally people understood. You take him out, you bring in Siakam, bringing in another all-star. Like, that's a very tough thing to figure out. You had no time. You're doing that all on the fly. You don't have an all-star break because it's here, and Tyrese is the mayor of the city, and then you just keep going, and then he's got to be going, and he's got it really stands to say that, this team needs an offseason. Just take a breath and be like, all right, let's look at the pieces. What the hell do we have? Let's build a game plan for it. And they haven't had a chance to do that at all. And it's amazing that they've done as much as they have, and they've played what they have. So I think you might see a little bit of cool adjustments having, this 4-day break between games 2 and game 3.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're going to have some time to work things out. I mean, I think it's just, they are going to learn a lot about themselves in these playoffs, and then spend the offseason saying, okay, like, who are we? How do we build around this? You know, and like, what do we need? Let's look at Halliburton and Siakam as the 2 key pieces, and then, and kind of Turner as the third, and then think, okay, what does that need? What's required around that? Let's build from there.
The last question I want to ask you, because we always talk about contracts, and obviously this pod is about just a little bigger picture than sometimes. Sure. I think it's I really respect Zach Lowe giving up his vote because he just doesn't like the feel of like having to vote for guys getting money, which I I respect him
Yes.
a lot for that.
Mm.
I'm curious
I
your
gave
thought.
mine up too.
Oh, did you?
I didn't take one. Yeah, no, I didn't.
All right,
take one.
dude. I give Dustin credit too. All right, you're in the same boat.
Well, I mean, I don't know that I'll do it. I'll probably. I did it specifically for the Tyrese situation.
Well, and so that's what I want to ask you about. Is you're way more plugged in. Do you think he'll get a third team All NBA selection? Because it feels like, and just from this seat here as just a fan and a podcaster, I'm not sure his stats or his play in the second half warranted it. I think his play in the first half did, which is a tough question because you could look at the reverse of Victor Wembanyama had a good second half, but is it recency bias because didn't have the first half? The guys that he's up against, I'm not sure. I do wonder if he'll get it because of just people feeling like this sucks, and I hate, and the whole different pod to talk about it. It's dumb. It's a 1 year snapshot. It really doesn't make a lot of sense. I get the games played thing. The irony here is I think that in trying to make that games played for this season, he might have cost himself an All NBA spot by not coming back a little too soon. But I'm just curious, you're a little more plugged in. Do you think he'll get third team All NBA and get that boost?
I think it's very close. I think it's gonna be very close. I mean, I did, basically when he crossed the 65 game threshold, I did a piece just on here's who he's competing with.
Right.
I tried to boil it down in terms of, okay, who do I think is locks, and whatnot, and who,
it's basically 4 or 5 guys for that last one spot. Cause there's 12 guys who are just locks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, there's some guys that are locks because it's what you think about their numbers or whatever, but LeBron James, I just don't see
LeBron James is getting an All NBA spot. He's also played well. Yeah,
exactly. He's played really well at 39. I just can't see him ultimately not getting one. I can't. Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, those guys. And so there's probably, I probably looked at it as there's maybe 7 or 8 guys for the last 4, 3 or 4 that, that aren't sure. And I think he's got a chance just because his name was so far out there, because he led the league in assists. I think that's one thing that it obviously, certainly it's not position based anymore. You don't have to have a point guard in there or anything like that. It's positionless. But I think that in your logic, you're saying okay, he was the best at a thing. So if he's the best at a thing, doesn't he have to get in? And I think that's something that you end up doing and saying he didn't have the same scoring numbers, but it's not apples to apples. It's okay, this guy was obviously spending a lot more time trying to create, and he clearly created at a level higher than anybody else. And I would, I would have been, conflicted. And I definitely, I basically let the league, asked me to do it. And I said, I was I'll do everything but All NBA. And they're well, it doesn't work that way. You have to do them all.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I honestly did not know how awards went exactly. But they said basically you can't do one thing and not do other thing. It's not like we pick you for this and don't pick you for that. If you have a college, I had a couple college football votes when I was covering IU, and I had a Heisman vote and I had a Biletnikoff vote, and I still have a Biletnikoff vote. But it's okay, that does, you don't have to have an Outland vote. You don't have to have a Davey O'Brien vote. You don't have to have a Doak Walker vote. You don't have to vote in all of them.
Right.
You just the ones you get that are positional are just random, in terms of and they're not picked by some greater power to assign them. Somebody just says, hey, you want to vote in the Biletnikoff?
Yep.
Kind of like that. So anyway, point of the matter, it's all right, you can't just blank off of that. But it's just it's for me, it's just it's insane. I can't be covering a guy closely that I get some say in whether or not he makes an extra $10 million a year. That's nuts.
Yeah.
Ethically. And so but it's
a really wild setup that I feel needs to be addressed, because
it does.
And for those who don't know, it comes down to it's not, again, I'm a different pod, a different topic. I think there has to be game limits for these things. So I have no problem with the 65 game thing. Makes total sense. The idea that you only get one chance to make the super max off of 1 year's, if Halliburton doesn't make it this year, but then makes All NBA every other year the rest of his career, it's he still can't get that extra $40 million. The Pacers can't pay him. It doesn't make any sense that it's a 1 year snapshot. I feel like it should be over the course of that extension, if you make
you
all
ever make
NBA,
all NBA,
then you get it and you can be retroactively paid. It's like there's enough money going around, but it puts the media.
I mean, it doesn't have to be retroactive. It could just be like it clicks over.
Yeah,
now.
it clicks over and you get it, but it puts the media in a really tough spot because if he doesn't make it, it's $40 to $50 million off that he's not going to make, and it's all based on media votes. It feels dirty. It just feels bad.
It is bad. It is bad. I mean, it just bottom line is, and it's just like I get, because like obviously media has been involved in voting for all of these things in all these years, and everybody knows that like, hey, you're going to get more money because of this,
right?
And like that's kind of understood. It's like, all right, like maybe if you're,
but to have it this explicit that 1 = 1 is tough.
Was that when it's saying like when you're talking about those kinds of dollars, like if you're getting $100,000 bonus for being MVP, I'm just throwing a dart at the wall.
Right.
It's like, all right, like that's a drop in the bucket for you, but if it's like, we're talking about like generational money that, like $100,000 is generational money, like for normal people, but like for guys that are like, all right, like I'm already making this many million, like 10 million, an extra 10 million a year is still massive,
right?
Still massive. And it's just like, we just shouldn't be in that position with people we cover, and it's just like, it's one thing. And it's also like, I would have less of an issue for it. Like, I'm sure there'll be other people, like I wouldn't mind voting in the future. And I'm making that decision for people that I don't cover directly.
Right.
Like it's like, okay, like that's from a distance, like whether, like if I was making that choice for Anthony Edwards, who I would definitely vote for, like I don't feel the same kind of like, I don't ick about it because, Anthony don't know me, I don't know Anthony. And so, like,
but you're covering Ty every single day. And it's like,
every single day. And it's just like, okay, like he's going to know, like, and if I vote for him, it's like, did I do it for that reason?
Right.
Like because it wouldn't have been easy. And to answer your initial question, it's not an easy call. Like it's not a sure thing.
Yeah.
And so like I probably, like for just what's best for me would probably be to vote for him. Just to be like, all right, just so for the purpose of the relationship, so I could always say I voted for you for all NBA, and like and but like that's not good. Like that's not.
Curious question: can you get your vote back? I'm just, how it works. Like you gave up your vote this year. Are you allowed to get it back now?
I guess. They said they'd check back in with me at the end of the year. I said like, this is my problem. This is my issue, and I was pretty direct, with them to say like, my concern about this is that, like this is just, we just don't think like I talked to my editor, Nat Newell, about it to say like, like basically they said like, here's if you'd like to do NBA awards, let us know by by this such and such date. Right. I was just like, I don't think I'm going to tell them I can't do all NBA. Like I was just like, I like to do the other voting because I think it's cool.
Right.
And I like doing it. Like it's just, it gets you engaged and whatnot, and kind of like really looking at the stuff, and it makes you kind of, in a way, you cover it better. I've liked doing, college all league teams, like when we did the Big Ten, and back when I was in James Madison for all CAA, like I really felt like that connected me to the decision making and stuff like that. Like it's something that kind of keeps you more locked in on the league. But I think that but I just said like, I can't do it for this. Like this is, I'm willing to do it next year, so that we'll reach back out next year basically, so but we see where you're coming from, it's sort of like why you wouldn't want to be a part of that. And it's just like, it's just too, again, it just puts you in an ethical quandary because you're just like, and like a part of what informed it, and like I probably would have, like this would have ethically been the thing anyway, but like, man, I caught hell when I gave him a MVP vote for the in-season tournament.
Really?
Like, oh yeah, because I was the only one. Like I mean, they list all those, and that immediately came out, and it was like, like all these people that are Lakers fans or whatever was like, oh, he's clearly a homer. Like Indy Star voted for the Indy guy, and I was like, because they said, this is basically, I think of it as for the whole event. It's not for the Final Four. It's not just for what happened in Vegas. It's not just for what happened in this game. It's the entire event. It's in season.
And you're right. He was electric in all of those games.
He was electric, and as great as LeBron was, and he was fantastic. Like like the Pacers won a whole bunch of games they were not supposed to win.
Correct.
At least when it started, they beat 4 playoff teams.
Yeah, and he single-handed, like, Tyrese won that Celtics game with a 4-point play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, like Cleveland, Philly, Boston, Milwaukee, he beats all of those. And he has a good game in the finals and lost.
Right.
So I was like, all right, like total event, like who writes the narrative here? Like the fact that the Pacers are in this is a bigger upset than the Lakers are in here. You know, they had a much tougher group. You know, like if you look at the group play, Pacers had a way tougher scenario. They had to go through Boston and Milwaukee, who again were like at that point clear 1 and 2 in the East. And, you know, like LA had who? New Orleans,
Right.
you know, like, and it's just like they just clearly had a much tougher, and Phoenix. I think they had Phoenix and New Orleans. And so, you know, even if you look at it in retrospect, you know, it's a much easier path that LA had than the Pacers had. But it's like I caught so much, you know, like
going up against Team LeBron, man. Like,
yeah, and people were like,
you should have posted a column the next day and been like, all right, man, MJ's better than LeBron. Like, just go all in and just I'm settling the debate like, right now.
I'm tarnishing out LeBron's legacy, but I'm like, first off, like it's the in-season tournament MVP. In 3 weeks, you won't remember who won.
Right.
You know, and like you're talking about like that, like I made this like holy decision in terms of like
right.
you know, or unholy choice by not picking. And I'm a like I can't use the word fan, but I'm a major LeBron admirer. I mean, it's you know, like I think him and Mike is a toss up. You know, like I think he's incredible. He's just an absolutely unreal, incredible player. And you know, like does things that Michael couldn't do, and Mike does some things that he couldn't do. But like, you know, it to me, it is a toss up question. And I give him all. I'm not trying to tear down the LeBron legacy at all. And I didn't think he, you know, it wasn't about anything about how he played. I just looked at. I just thought I knew he was going to win, and I thought, hey, like I think Tyrese deserves an MVP vote for, you know, getting the Indiana Pacers, who are not supposed to be here, in the finals.
But no, I hear exactly what you're saying, because that's all for an in-season tournament MVP award, which has some meaning, but it's not, you know, everything. And like this is that, but you're also adding $50 million on the table.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just like, okay, like I'm sure there was a bonus for getting, you know, in-season tournament MVP.
But it's not 50 million.
For them is negligible. And it's just like, you know, like the idea of like what just what that was going to be like. And it was like, okay, you know, like I don't need like, I don't need to be called a homer. I don't need to be not even just called, but just question the
But
ethics.
you think based on kind of your feel, he will make third team All NBA?
I think he'll make it. I think he'll be really close. I think at the end of the day, he probably makes it. I think he squeaks in, but it's tough. It's not an easy vote, you know, like, and again, like I watch him every day, and you know, like I would not be sure, you know, because again, he did struggle at the end. And so I don't think he probably could have shaved a couple more off in terms of games. You know, certainly shouldn't have played the Portland game. You know, I think that's very clear. But he had to get rolling. He had to get started. And he would have not been better off if he shut it down.
Yeah. The other thing too that I will say, and then we have to wrap up, like the thing that is watching Ty closely the second half of this season, you know, it still doesn't, he's not back to that form. Hope it gets back next season. But the thing I got to give him credit for is most of the time he still always made the right basketball play. And he gave up a lot of, and I'm just thinking of tons of little moments and little games, you know, games against the Pistons and the Raptors, and, you know, he's still trying to win and make the right play. And he's forsaking points when I think he could have easily added another 2 or 3 points to his points per game average. Like you never saw him just, hey man, I'm going to go for 20. I'm just going to get a couple more shots and just get 15, 20 more points just so I can pad the stats to make it look better. Like it never felt like he was doing that. He was always, if he had the lane, but he saw, you know, Nesmith open in the corner, he'd make the pass. And even if it was a hockey pass that basically got him then no stats, he would still do it. And that's the part where it's like, I love this guy. Because like he's got $40 million on the line. And I think a lot of people would be like, man, screw that. Like I'm going to do something that gets me a stat. And he wasn't doing that. So I'll end on that.
No, you have to give him credit for that. Yeah. Sometimes he passes up layups when he should just take the darn layup.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just, you're there, you're cruising and you're trying to be a touch too slick with it. But like, you know, even things like that he, you know, be on a break alone with Obi.
Yeah. And he'll lay it up to Obi. And
I'm throwing it to Obi because that's fun. And like, he will always do that, you know, and like, whether that's whether it's the right play where it's like the half court play of like, okay, like the smart move as the point guard to make that pass, but like also it's in the break and either one of us can score this, but it'll be way more fun if you do it.
Yeah. And that's the tough thing with Halliburton. I think it's always gonna be tough evaluating him. I mean, guys who are voting are watching games, so I'm not putting them in that category, but it's just, I think it's tough to evaluate him nationally because again, the Pacers not on national TV. When they are, they're on at 5:30. Like we're always getting screwed around. Like hopefully we get more national TV games next year, but everything he does doesn't always show up in the box score. And so you look at the box score, it's like 12 points, 15 assists. Like the assist number is always nuts, but he's never going to put up a LeBron stat of 28, 8, and 8 every single night. And I think that's what hurts him. Anyway, let's wrap up there. Dustin, it was awesome having you on as always. Let's catch up hopefully next week after we have a little more clarity in the series and hopefully before or after your drive to Milwaukee. But as always, Dustin Dopirak, catch him on the Indy Star. And for all of you listening, as always, appreciate you listening. And let's go Pacers this weekend for the Right Up Meridian podcast. This is Scott signing off.